Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
I rise today to join with the Chairman in support of H.R. 180, the Darfur Accountability and Divestment Act. I am increasingly concerned, I'm outraged in a sense, about the continuing atrocities in the Darfur region of Sudan. Without question, the horrific actions of the Janjaweed militia and the Sudanese government must immediately end, and the nations of the world must speak in unison against this genocide, and that is what it is, a genocide. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been killed, many of them in particularly brutal ways. Another estimated 2 million in Darfur have been displaced refugees, plus hundreds of thousands in Chad. This is a crisis that must be addressed now and must be addressed on each and every front. Unfortunately, the international community, specifically in the United Nations, the UN has consistently failed in efforts to bring peace to this region. UN resolutions have lacked the teeth or failed to be implemented, and that is because of the Security Council members such as China and Russia as they continue to stall the progress. So as the UN slowly moves towards a real peacekeeping force, other groups are being forced to pull out because of violence in the region. Just recently, Oxfam announced in June that they will have to pull out of the largest camp in Darfur, where more than 130,000 people have found shelter. And without a way to protect humanitarian aid flowing into their area, thousands more will face starvation. And that is why I'm pleased that we are bringing this important legislation to the floor today, the Darfur Accountability and Investment Act. It requires the Secretary of Treasury to create a list of companies who have a direct investment in or conducting businesses operation in Sudan's power, mineral, oil, or military equipment industries. It authorizes the states and local municipalities to divest based on the Treasury list or other list to protect them from lawsuits. Thirdly, it amends the Investment Company Act of 1940 and the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 to protect mutual funds and pension funds from lawsuits if they choose to divest. And finally, fourthly, it prohibits the U.S. government from entering into or renewing contracts with companies on that list. I was very pleased, I should say, Mr. Speaker, with the Chairman working in a bipartisan manner with myself and the Ranking Member Baucus on the committee, and we agreed to make a number of changes to the bill to address some of the concerns made from our side of the aisle. One of the specific changes that was made was calls on countries around the world to take similar steps with regard to this situation. The section states, "It is the sense of Congress that the government of all other countries should adopt measures similar to those contained in the Act, to publicize the activities of all persons that, through their financial dealings, knowingly or unknowingly, enable the government of Sudan to continue to oppress and to commit genocide against the people in the region and other regions of the Sudan, and to authorize divestment from and the avoidance of future investment in." As the distinguished ranking member of the committee, Mr. Baucus, has noted, economic and financial considerations are important, but in a loving nation can never be as justification for complicity in genocide. Closing our financial markets to those who, particularly directly or indirectly, are engaged in the slaughter of innocent human beings is well within our ability and ought to be the bedrock of our principles. America is indeed a loving nation, and allowing our financial markets to be utilized by an evil regime which conducts religious and racial genocide is inconsistent with our values and principles. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself just 30 seconds to begin by saying that it was over the last 10 years there have been multiple genocides that have occurred under the UN's watch. There was Bosnia, Rwanda, and now Darfur. Each time the UN has failed to take appropriate action, each time it's been because of political and economic pressure. And when the current situation arose in Darfur, the best that we could get out of the UN and the then Secretary General Kofi Annan was, at the anniversary of Rwanda, simply a statement on the floor of that anniversary and a moment of silence and the pledge of this shall never happen again. Unfortunately, it has happened again, and that is why we are here today. And with that, I will yield. Mr. Speaker, just a concluding point with the need for us to take initial movement on this, but also to look for the rest of the world community to become involved. You know, it was just last year when the UN's Deputy Secretary General Malik Brown said, with regard to Darfur on this point, he said, "And yet what can the U.S. do alone in the heart of Africa in a region the size of France? In essence, the U.S. is stymied before it even passes go. It needs a multilateral means to address the Sudan's concerns. I believe that is true, but this is the first step in that direction. And with that, I once again thank the General Lady from California and the Chairman as well for his work together in a bipartisan manner on this legislation. And with that, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also thank again the distinguished chairman of the committee for bringing this important legislation to the floor. And so I do rise, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Recognized for such time as he may consume.
And I rise today in support of H.R. 2347, the Iran Sanctioning Enabling Act. You know, the radical hard-line Islamic leadership of Iran presents one of the most serious threats today to peace and stability throughout the world. First, their quest to acquire nuclear weapons technology. When you combine that with comments by the Iranian president such that the nation of Israel should be, quote, wiped off the map, make it clear that the Iranian leadership is unpredictable and dangerous. The Iranian president has gone even farther by speculating that the collateral damage of attacking Israel with nuclear weapons would be worth the cost to the Muslim world. So for a regime that is developing nuclear capabilities, these are truly extraordinary words, and the world must take notice. The Iranian president and the Ayatollah's supreme wish is the destruction of Israel and all of her people. They have not tried to mask their goal. They doubt that the Holocaust ever occurred in the past, and now they're making plans for the Holocaust of the future. And there is no doubt about it. Their fresh Holocaust will stretch far beyond the borders of Israel. They will encompass all whom they consider a threat to their values and to their plans. So to confront Iran now is not only in the national interest, it is also in our interest because the U.S. will surely sometime be a target itself. You know, there is much talk at the UN about preventing wars and genocide, but unfortunately there's so too little action. The world should not ignore these words now of aggression. Because of the lack of success the UN has had in keeping a nuclear technology out of the hands of these radicals, the United States must now take the appropriate measures and work directly with all of our allies to do everything in our power to prevent Iran from obtaining those weapons. And so that is why I'm here today. I'm pleased with H.R. 2347. For this act will do several important measures. First, as indicated, it permits, not mandates, the divestiture from companies with investments of $20 million or more in Iran's energy sector. Secondly, it directs the federal government to produce a list of such companies that qualify for such investment. Thirdly, it authorizes state governments, local governments, and public educational institutions to divest even their pension fund assets from companies on that list. Fourthly, it permits private investment and pension plan managers to divest from companies listed, as the chairman states, without breaching their fiduciary responsibilities. As the committee report herein notes, companies based in the U.S. are already barred from doing business with Iran. But these trade and investment sanctions do not extend to foreign companies which operate legally. Foreign persons that have invested in Iran's energy sector, despite Iran's support of international terrorism and its nuclear program, have provided additional financial means for Iran's activities in these areas. And many United States persons have unknowingly invested in those same persons. So, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, it is my hope that by allowing U.S. companies to divest their financial interest from any foreign-owned companies doing business with Iran, we will continue to put that pressure on that radical Iranian leadership to end their stated goals of acquiring nuclear weapons and encourage other countries to bolster their trade and economic restrictions on Iran as well. So I urge my colleagues to support this small but very important step in reining in this extremist regime. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.